Hey y'all, I'm Emily, an almost lifelong quilter with a lot of stories to tell. I have loved quilts and talking about them for as long as I can remember, and I'm here to celebrate the tradition of quilting with you. From family heirlooms to thrift store finds, every quilt holds a piece of history and a little piece of a quilter's heart. Join me every other week to get back to your quilting roots. We'll celebrate quilts and the real people who made them, learn a little bit about the history of quilting, and have lots of fun exploring ways to reclaim tradition in a modern world. I'm so glad you're joining me this week here at Patchwork Revival. Hello, friends. Welcome to the Patchwork Revival podcast. This is episode 15. I am your host, Emily, and we are talking all about the generational connection we find through quilting. Today is going to be a solo episode. Before we dive in and get started, I just wanted to do a little bit of housekeeping. First off, I want to be sure that you all know I'm reading all of the reviews that I find on Apple Podcasts, Spotify. I'm reading YouTube comments. It's really fun to interact with community, and I would encourage you all to do the same. Obviously, I want to continue a trend of kind interactions, of uplifting one another, because that's what the whole point of this podcast is. We are welcoming all kinds of quilters, all styles of quilters, all ages of quilters. So just please know that I would love you all to be interactive and create a community in the comment section, but I want it to be a kind community, and I will not hesitate to delete comments if I have to. Mostly because I just want this to be encouraging, and I want to always focus on the community of quilting as a positive, really welcoming place, because I truly believe that's what it is. That's what it's always been for me and for so many people that I know. Now, there haven't been any issues with that. I just wanted to sort of put that out there because as I encourage people to comment and to leave reviews and things like that, I just want to be sure we're all coming from a place of being constructive and helpful to one another and not tearing down or judging or narrowing the scope of what this podcast is truly meant to be. So this is episode 15. We've been doing a couple of solo shows. I have a couple interview shows coming up with some guests that are so incredible. I can't wait to share it with you. I am in a little bit, just personally, of a sort of flustered state because about a year ago we moved just outside of the city where I work and where we were living. We love it being a little bit outside of the city. It's so beautiful in this part of the state. And we just have decided we needed a little bigger house. Something came up just down the street. It was not planned ish. We, casually looking, and then you find something that's perfect and you're like, oh man. So I'm in the middle of the stress of all of that. And I'm also about to be going back to work. I've been on leave for several weeks just from having a baby and getting to spend time with my baby and my family. So I've had a really awesome summer. I hope you guys have had a great summer too. Obviously, it's been a little bit chaotic just from a current events standpoint. So I hope that quilting has been a place for you to come and relax, rest, rejuvenate, find peace. And I hope that this podcast is finding you in a great place. It would mean so much to me if you would share the podcast with a friend, give it a like, leave a review, subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. The more subscribes and likes and ratings we have, the more this appears in other people's feed and gets served to them so that they might be able to enjoy the podcast as well. Another comment that I had on one of my YouTube shows was I skimmed through this because I found this episode and I just really wanted to see some quilts. Specifically, this person was requesting that we show some quilts from my grandmother's era. And I thought that was such a great idea. It was really intriguing and really interesting. The issue, obviously, though, is that I am primarily focusing on this as an audio podcast. The video is a great bonus. I love putting my episodes up on YouTube because I feel like it's a fresh audience from what I have on Apple Podcasts, for example. But that's really difficult to translate visual things like a quilt into a podcast episode that a lot of people are hearing as an audio format primarily. So I thought what I would do is just try to discuss a little bit about what I am working on currently in my quilting studio. I also, please know, I do work to publish things called show notes on my website, www.patchworkrevivalstudios.com. I will tell you right now, I am a couple episodes behind, but there are episodes from the past about my grandmother, about my quilts that I've made, about quilts that she made that I've discussed and talked about. And there are pictures, there are photos actually on those blog posts. So blog post show notes, kind of the same thing to me. And so you can go check those out if you would like and if you're interested. And I'm going to work really hard to continue making those because I am a person who loves visual kind of ancillary things. And so I totally get that. And I love that feedback. And I'm going to really consider how I can work that into things, episodes and the show notes, etc. So this week, I wanted to share a couple things that I'm working on before we dive into today's episode. I have been working on just a fun project for myself. It's been slow going because I was pregnant, I had a newborn, all the things. Now I'm moving. I don't know what I've been thinking, but I have a couple of patterns that are written. I need to make some samples. It just feels like stuff that I kind of need to get off my list, but I haven't found time to do it. And so I started working on this project that I had started over a year ago. And then I put it away because I didn't have time to deal with it. I don't know. Something else came up. You know how it is with projects. But I totally dove in, committed, decided to finish it, and I did. And what it is a quilt that is based on a photograph of a quilt. It's a photograph of my grandmother with all four of her children, so my dad and my aunts and uncles under they're basically look as though they're having a picnic under a tree in their pasture back home. It's one of those pictures where I can just smell that East Texas soil. I can feel how hot and humid it is, but there's a breeze coming under the tree in this shady spot. They've probably just had, I don't know, a conversation, a meal, a snack, and they're sitting on this quilt. And the quilt is a scrappy quilt. It's made entirely of half square triangles. It's a black and white photo. I have no idea what colors are in the quilt, but I can imagine. Just kind of knowing my grandmother's style, knowing some of the quilts from her and one of my aunts from back then that they were making. So I went ahead and made a quilt. I'm going to show some of it on YouTube. I can't really hold this whole thing up because it's out of the whole shot, but it's basically just half square triangles in different blocks. So it's a total of 16 blocks. Each block is made of 16 half square triangles. If you look at Barbara Brackman's Encyclopedia of Pieced Quilt Patterns, this is called I think Anne and Andy I saw. It's obviously just kind of a classic traditional design. It's nothing original. I really wanted to make it scrappy because I had a lot of these fabrics sitting around that I never could figure out how I was going to use them. They're quite different from sort of the style that I've evolved in. I've had these fabrics for probably 10 years or something. But if you look, a lot of them are sort of Depression era reproductions. And then I did alternating backgrounds with this Essex linen stripe with a vintage gingham, actually from my grandmother's stash. And then this is like Kona ice peached yardage that I had. And so I wrote this as kind of a scrap busting pattern that I am thinking I'm going to share with y'all. I wrote the pattern because I want to be able to come back and reproduce this, replicate it over time when I have some more scraps build up. And so I figured, why not share it? Obviously, I have not sat down to write it because that would just take a lot of time that I seem to not have, even though I think I do have it. So, anyway, I have a quilt here. I wanted to just show it a little bit, let you know if you're interested at all in being on my email list, which is where I will send free patterns every so often, as well as share information on what's coming up this month, what I've been working on, and things like that. You can go to my Instagram at Patchwork Revival Studios. And in the biography there, there'll be a link where you can sign up for my email list if you're interested at all. So, today, what are we talking about today? We got through the housekeeping. I'm going to sip a little coffee and then we'll dive in. Honestly, I've been a little bit nervous to talk about this, but I do think it's important and it is very relevant to every different sort of level and aspect of quilting as a whole. And that is sort of the economic turmoil that is swirling about in, honestly, sort of on a global scale. I'm not an economist. I'm certainly not a politician, and I don't care to get into any of that discussion. I'm not trying to come from any of those aspects. I'm really approaching this from what I see and what I've experienced, what I have talked to other quilters about, what I have heard other quilting businesses talk about as designers, distributors, developers of things like notions, fabric manufacturers. These are all industry related things, businesses that are being affected by everything that's going on. So, in case you've had your head sort of in the sand, which is completely valid given everything that's going on around us, it's really hard to listen to everything and to evaluate everything without driving yourself completely nuts. I have a few sources that I like to listen to try to stay informed about a few things, but I like I said, I am not approaching this from that standpoint at all, other than I do understand this is a current event that is affecting basically global geopolitics and economy, all these things. But as it relates to quilting, there are tariffs that have been instated on goods coming into the US from every single country, and those tariffs have been increased. Um, Tariff. What is a tariff? A tariff is a tax. If you Google it, which is what I did because, hello, we have to know the basics here. It is basically a tax on imported goods. So, goods that come from another country, we receive them, and to receive them, we pay a tax on them. And just knowing sort of the way business works, if we think about this, okay, well, you know, manufacturers or companies who have things manufactured in a foreign country are going to have their goods manufactured and then shipped over here so that they can be sold. To bring those goods into the country, they have to pay a little bit more because they have to pay these extra tariffs. And then, that's sort of passed on down through the chain of command, or the gosh, what do they call it in forensics? Chain of custody. Okay, so, the distributor or the company has to pay to get their goods off the ship. And then they're going to pass that on, a little bit extra cost to a distributor. And then a little bit of extra cost is going to go down to the retailer. And then the retailer is going to cover, incorporate a little bit of that cost into the customer. So ultimately, I think we, the people, get to pay a little bit more for a lot of different products. Okay. Um, Whether you think that's good or bad, it's just a fact. It's just sort of how, 2 plus 2 makes 4. And we really, I think, have to be realistic and understand how that is going to affect us as customers and as friends and supporters of businesses that are literally putting food on their table and trying to deal with all this. At first this year, there was the closure of Joann's Fabrics, a big box retailer here in the United States. And everyone was a little bit rocked and shaken by that. That has nothing to do with the turmoil or the uncertainty that's going on now. But originally, some people felt like it was maybe a good thing because we could be now focused on supporting small shops, small businesses, online quilt shops, local quilt shops for our fabric, our notions, and things like that. Obviously, there are places. I mean, I live in a town where I have to drive 35, 40 minutes to my nearest quilt shop. And I only have one option. That one quilt shop is it for me. I don't have any other options for fabric or things like that. There's one in a differing town. I haven't been there yet, but it's hard to shop locally for fabric, specifically in a little smaller niche like quilting. Ordering online can be problematic for some people. People like to feel their fabric, they like to hold their fabric, all the things. But ultimately, it did look like, oh, we're going to have a little bit of a shift towards small businesses just by default because now we don't have this big box retailer that's has such a big presence in our country. But then these tariffs hit, and I think part of the issue and how these are really going to be affecting businesses is that so far, they have been very unpredictable. They're on, they're off, they're on, they're off. And what I'm trying to understand is if I were a business, how would I be able to plan things, to plan my inventory or what I was going to do for the year? Because think about if you're making a business plan, you're really probably projecting out at least a year, if not further, with this is what I'm going to put up for my inventory. This is what I want to buy. This is what my customers like. I want to be able to offer them this, this, and this. So I'm going to come up with this amount of funds so that I can buy that from my distributor and put it in my shop. Or, man, I'm a fabric company. I love this trend of, say, woven fabrics, and I'm going to open up a new relationship with a manufacturer overseas so that I can dive into manufacturing woven fabrics. And I'm going to bring those to my customers because that's what my customers have been really wanting. And this is how, I mean, it takes forever to manufacture something overseas. I have a very slight experience in this because my husband and I sort of dove into clothing manufacturing in actually the country at that time was India. And it's a whole thing. It takes you have to be like 6 months ahead of the cycle of what you want to order, what you want to manufacture, and when you want to actually sell it. You're at least 6 to 12 months ahead. And I feel like that's sort of a general thing for manufacturing and retailing in general. In fact, if you look, every spring, fabric companies um, will release sort of their lookbooks for the entire year. So, spring, winter, kind of, beginning of the year, this is what's going to be shipping in November 2025 or April 2025. And the interesting thing about that is that fabric shops or quilt shops have had a plan about what they're going to order all along. They know if I want to carry that collection, if I think my customers are interested in it, if my customers tell me they're interested in it, I'm going to have to order that in April and I'll have it in my shop in November. So imagine if you were a fabric shop, this is just for example, and you had placed an order for something that was going to arrive in November and you placed your order in April. Well, between now and November, what in the world is going to happen with these tariffs or taxes? This is a tax increase on businesses that's probably going to be passed on to the customer. But I think that it's important to remember, even as a customer, we are still part of the quilting industry. We are the people who support businesses that are in quilting. We support the designers who write quilt patterns, sell quilt patterns, invent quilt notions, manufacture quilt notions, sell the quilting notions that we love and we use. And so, to me, I personally feel something of a responsibility to be a really active part of the quilting industry that I am a beneficiary of and a part of. So, I've been thinking a lot about what does that look like for me as a customer because I will assume that some of this is on other people's minds too. Basically, my assumption is going to be that we are going to be paying more for our hobby just based on the fact that these materials are going to cost more to bring to stores. Um, the other thing I do recognize and that I do understand is that this is going to look different for each of us. Each of us is on a different budget. Each of us is coming from a different perspective. For example, I have a very, 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 very small business where I sell quilt patterns. I sell digital PDFs. Um, the way this will affect me in that sort of business is it's going to cost me more to make samples, and I make samples of all of my patterns because one, I want to know that they work and reliably are reproducible, and number two, because I want to inspire people, and number three, I want the quilt. That's why I wrote the pattern because I wanted to make the quilt. So this will affect everybody, and like I said, I really just want to sort of inspire and open up a conversation around how we, even as customers, can offer our support and our solidarity and do our part in sort of lifting up the quilting businesses and the quilt shops and the manufacturers that we all love and really want to see flourish or at least survive in these sort of kind of crazy unpredictable times. Also, I do just want to make sure that it's understood this is not meant to be some sort of commentary on uniquely on these current events. This is just the sign of the times. This is just what we're going through right now. But I think that even personally, people will find that this could be helpful for them um, if you're going through a time like where you're having to buy a house or unexpectedly having to deal with, I don't know, all kinds of issues. You've lost a job, you had a new baby, your budget is just not what it used to be or not going as far as it used to. Can you still be active? Can you still be a member of the quilting community? Is it okay to not buy new fabric all the time? Is it okay to continue to try to support businesses as best you can on your limited budget? That's going to look different for everybody, but it's going to be something that we're always going to have to wrestle with and be intentional about. So, all the current events, I think, have just sort of prompted me to think about my contribution. But I would encourage you to sort of think about that for yourself too. And that's why I wanted to make this episode to talk about basically quilting and maintaining your hobby or business, I suppose, but mostly hobby in these times of economic uncertainty. So I made a list of 5 ways that I'm focusing on this. And I want to start with the first, and that is I am committed to focusing on the quilting community as a whole. This is not a competition. This is not a dividing line. We are a community of quilters. Quilters, when I say quilting, I'm talking about people who make quilts, people who are alone in their studios at midnight sewing up quilts, people who are running local quilt shops, people who work in those quilt shops, people who work in, you know, making notions, ordering fabrics, putting themselves out there. We're all together. If you're going to quilt market or you've never been to quilt market in your life and you don't know a single other quilter in your personal bubble, you're still part of the quilting community and we are all in this together. So I think we can all just sort of agree, let's just focus on supporting each other as best we can and figure out a way that we can do that together in a meaningful way as individuals. And like I said, that'll look different for everyone. But I think if we approach this from a community standpoint, we're all going to come out much better in the end. So, one thing I want to talk about is also understanding the why behind your quilting practice. Are you doing this to make money? Are you doing this to have fun? Is this how you connect with people? Is this how you connect with yourself after, you know, a long day? That's basically what I do. I talked a lot about this in episode 10, where my husband was on, and we kind of both talked about how quilting has been so important to me personally because it's how I decompress and process things and have solitude and quiet. And that's really how I recharge. So for me, it really is a part of my self care, my mental well being. And it's sort of mental maintenance for me, is how I like to think about it. I would never tell people that quilting is a substitute for seeking help if you feel depressed or anxious or like you have some mental health needs that should be addressed professionally. But I do know that there are plenty of studies validating the fact that having a hobby um, just has so many good things that contribute to your sense of well being and just sort of general happiness. Um, and so for me, I am going to continue to prioritize my hobby, even though I'm on a set budget. Even though I could put some of that money, and I might have to put some of that money to affording my groceries, I'm still going to have a time budget and a financial budget to spend on quilting because for me, it is a priority that goes beyond, just doing this for fun or making fun little things. It's a very meaningful thing to me. And so, continuing a hobby in a time of uncertainty or stress can be a very important thing. And it is a valid thing to continue to prioritize it, even amidst maybe some changes in finances, as long as you're able to. I'm also focusing on being very intentional with how I spend my money and how I spend my time. As your budget might decrease, or maybe you have the same budget, but you just can't fit as much in it. I think that when I look back on how I have spent a lot of my quilting time and resources, I will start a project, I'll get it done halfway, and then I'll start on something else. Or I'll see a fabric and think, oh man, I really love that. I really want that. And then I'll get it and then I'll just sit around and I won't do anything with it. And then eventually I like to end up donating or trading or giving it away or something like that if I need to get it out of my sewing room, like for moving. But when I'm not moving, you know what I'm doing? I'm putting it in cupboards, I'm stashing it away. And so I've basically made a plan for the year of projects that I want to make and what materials I want to make those projects with. Some of them are with fabrics that I already have. Some of them are going to be with fabrics that are from small companies. I think of all fabric manufacturers as kind of small companies that we love as quilters. A lot of them are family owned, family maintained, and I just love supporting kind of smaller businesses. And so there are certain fabric manufacturers that I have a certain just love for and I want to continue to support. So I'm going to very intentionally buy fabrics from them for specific projects throughout the year as I'm able to. And I may not be able to do that for every project. I may be using a lot of my stash. But to me, it's still important to financially support businesses because that's what a business is. It is an entity that exists to make money in order to pay employees and offer them benefits and things like that to keep food on their table, just the same way we have jobs. So I'm going to continue to spend where I can and be really intentional with my money and also with my time because when I'm spending time, that means I value what I'm doing and what I'm using. So I want to be sure that if I'm spending my money on something, I'm really going to enjoy it. I don't want to do projects that I don't love because life's too short for that, right? These resources are too valuable to pour into something that we don't love and that we're not having fun with. So I'm just not going to do that anymore. And I feel like being intentional also kind of helps put some blinders on and stay away from those distractions. Like, I actually had some marketing emails from various companies. One was for a quilting related company. I'm not going to share names, but it was, hey, get this stuff before the tariffs hit. And I felt like that was a little bit predatory and a little bit of the wrong message. Like, hey, buy more stuff before you have to pay more for it. In some ways, that makes sense if you have a plan. I don't know. I'm not going to panic buy. I'm not going to fall into that trap. I'm going to buy things that I love and that very intentionally support businesses that I love. And I'm going to just continue to enjoy making quilts. I think so often I fall into this trap of consuming. I buy fabric because it's cool or it's being marketed or it's obviously it's really pretty. That's why I like it. That's why it caught my eye. But I basically love every fabric out there. I'm not going to lie. I just love fabric and I love playing with it and being creative with it. In some ways, that's the creative process. We start something new, we try something new, and then we decide if we like it or not, and that's it. But that can create some waste, honestly, in our valuable resources of both time and money. To me, those are our sort of primary resources that we are pouring into making a quilt. So I'm absolutely a proponent of trying new things, stretching our creative muscles, trying new techniques, learning new things. But I'm also realizing that sort of in this nebulous situation where there's uncertainty swirling around us and knowing that quilting is my sort of safe spot, my comfort zone, I really want to feel supported and comfortable in every project that I'm making. So I'm going to be I'm going to be focusing on things that I know will fill my cup. A quilting project can cost me, honestly, hundreds of dollars if you look at the cost of materials. If you just went and bought stuff to make a throw size quilt budget's not an issue. You can buy anything you want, new fabric, new batting, new backing, all the things, hundreds of dollars. That's just a reality, even now. And I think the cost of that may only go up, to be honest. So I want to know that I'm going to enjoy the process and know that I'm going to love the finished product, whether that's something I'm going to keep or gift to someone. So I'm really going to be intentional on doing projects that I love and projects that make me happy. For me, that looks like planning. So I'm going to have a list of materials that I want for particular projects that I want. I already have a list of fabric companies that I really value and want to continue to support. So I have some ideas. I've gone actually and looked at their websites or their social media. They'll usually have sort of sneak peeks of all of the fabric collections that they're going to release over the year. You may have a particular designer that you want to support. Uh, all these kinds of things. So I think if you really take a step back and just kind of make a game plan, you can really make your time and your budget work for you and still be infusing some money and some financial growth into the quilting industry because we want it to succeed. We want it to thrive. And I really believe that it can if we all just kind of come together and support each other. I really want to try to work in new products where I can. For example, I have always wanted a particular kind of quilting ruler. I will tell you, I do not have that many quilting rulers. I have one that is 9 inches by 14 inches, I want to say, and I cut about 95% of my yardage when I'm cutting a quilt with that ruler. I just make it work. I have a 5-inch by 24-inch ruler. It's not my favorite thing. I got it cheap when I was first starting to quilt. I felt like I needed this big ruler, and then I really wish I would have gotten one. If I'm going to go big, I should have gotten a bigger one. All these kinds of things. And I've been really wanting one. Well, I have a pattern that I'm working on, and it's a strip piece pattern, and it would be really great if I had a long ruler that I could cut my full length or width of fabric for every strip. So I think I might invest in that ruler. I already have all the fabric for that project. I still need to buy a couple things raw material wise, like batting and things like that. But I've just been trying to think about where I can intentionally spend my money. And when I spend my money, I'm going to spend it at my local quilt shop because I know that they carry this particular kind of ruler. Um, I do feel lucky to know that I am probably gonna have the budget for that. Obviously, I don't have a crystal ball. I might not, and I might be eating my words in a couple months, but if you don't, I think this is when you start getting thrifty. This is when you start asking friends for help. "Hey, can I borrow that giant ruler you have? Because I wanna cut some stuff," or, "Can I just come over and cut my quilt real quick? I'll cook you dinner, or I'll bring you dinner," or something like that. Maybe you go to your creative reuse store, you hit your thrift stores. You can find so much stuff secondhand. While that doesn't necessarily support businesses, it can still help support maybe designers because you're buying a pattern. Even if you're using all secondhand materials for that, you're still supporting, the person you're buying them from, and that may allow them to continue to open their doors. So, kind of get involved locally and see where it takes you. Um, like I said, we're all in this together. This is our community. We'll come together and we'll make it great, right? To sort of further dive into the focus on community and local support, another vastly underused resource is your local library. My local library has long arms, they have sewing machines, they have an AccuQuilt cutting system, so like a die cutting system. They have a laser cutter that I feel pretty sure you could laser cut maybe fabric, like applique shapes, but I know for sure you can laser cut acrylic, so you could make your own acrylic templates. Um, there are proprietary designs, so don't be like selling them, but you know, instead of cutting them out of paper, you can use your local resources to sort of make those things more accessible to you. And that's important. You have to make things accessible to you so that you can support in the different pockets of the industry that mean something to you and that you really want to support. Maybe thinking of community, let's say you have a little bit of extra money in your budget, an extra $15, and you're going to make a quilt pattern that you found from your favorite designer that they released in, I don't know, they're going to release it in June and you really love it and you know that somebody else would really love it. Maybe you're able to buy 2 copies of that pattern and give one to a friend. That way you're supporting the designer 2 times over, supporting their small business, supporting your own community and your own hobby, and being generous, gifting something to a person that's a part of your quilting community. I think there's so many creative ways to go about doing this. Uh, I would say don't be afraid to ask for what you need. Don't be afraid to be giving. Don't be afraid to be generous. The truth is, we live in a time that is just almost miraculous with how many things are just available at our fingertips. They cost more, yes. They are going to continue to cost more, it appears. But the things that we love are made by businesses, they're brought to us by businesses. I think it's really important to support businesses, particularly in the quilting industry, because I feel like so many of them are small businesses. And I have so many friends who have fabric shops, who write their own quilt patterns, who sell paper patterns to shops, who make samples for shops, who order fabric to keep a shop open. And it just has kind of come to me that we as customers and as fellow business owners have a chance to really make a difference and to really be supportive and lift each other up in this time and to really create community. Um, I would also say, we can be generous with our time. Teach someone how to quilt. Maybe somebody who's just really hurting and they're flailing and they're just frustrated and all they do is doom scroll or listen to the news or something. You know what is a great alternative to that? making a quilt, and I would love to teach somebody how to do that. So if you're local to me, you can come find me and we will learn how to quilt together and we'll have a totally positive and fun time. I think that in some ways it feels a little bit like we're weathering a storm, but what's really encouraging is knowing how, if you think about antique quilts and historical quilts, a lot of us can recognize a quilt from the 1930s. And you know what was happening then? The Great Depression. People had nothing. Like a quarter of people in our country were unemployed. But they were making some incredible quilts and they made a lot of them. And they have stood the test of time. They have inspired generations after. And look at us now. That's exactly what we have the opportunity to do. And so instead of sort of succumbing to the doom and gloom and feeling like, oh, great, now I'm just going to have to sew from my stash for the foreseeable future, which can be incredible, amazing. I would encourage it. Work some of your stash fabrics into some of those new collections you're buying if you can't afford the whole collection. There's so many options like that. But I just want to encourage us all that we are part of a community. This is a community effort. We should support each other. This goes so far beyond geography or politics or any of that stuff. This is just about people who love quilting. We love creating things. We love supporting our fellow quilters and quilting industry. And I think that there are a lot of different ways that we can go about it. So I tried to brainstorm some of those for you today. I hope that something struck a bell, rang a bell, struck a chord in you. If you have other ideas and other intentional ways that you are supporting quilting businesses or other quilters during this time or this kind of time, drop a comment down below. You can send me, a message at Patchwork Revival Studios on Instagram. I would love to hear from you because I think that's something we can do is share with each other. So share in the comments. What are you doing? Um, if you have fabric, list it on your social media. Tell somebody, just pay shipping and I'll send this to you or something like that. Anyway, I hope that you're all feeling loved by your quilting practice. I hope you're finding peace in creating. I know I am. I hope something in this episode sticks with you and inspires you to be generous, offer help, ask for help if you need it, and remember that we're all in this together. That's it for today. I'll see you in the next episode. Bye, y'all. Well, that's it for this episode of Patchwork Revival. I loved having you here with me talking all things quilty. Don't forget to subscribe to the show and leave a rave review. Also, be sure to jump down to the show notes to find links for this episode, as well as the link to my shop where you can enjoy 15% off as a podcast listener with code REVIVAL. Remember that the Patchwork Revival podcast is here to celebrate the connection made in the quilts we love. I'll see you next time.